You've been told a lie. The lie is that your house is an investment. The lie is that your 401k is a pathway to a comfortable retirement. The lie is that the number you see in your bank account represents wealth. It's a comfortable, soothing, validating lie, and you believe it because every time you log into your brokerage account, the numbers are bigger. Every time you get that email from Zillow, the graph goes up and to the right. You feel richer. You feel smart. But let me ask you a question. If you're so rich, why does it feel like you're running faster and faster just to stay in the same place? Why is the cost of everything, the food you eat, the gas in your car, the tuition for your kids, the down payment on a home, why is it all slipping further and further out of reach? You feel it, don't you? That quiet background hum of anxiety. The sense that the floor is just a little bit thinner than it used to be. That the whole game is rigged. You are not going crazy. You are simply noticing the illusion. The greatest magic trick ever performed. Because you're not getting richer. Your measuring stick is getting shorter. The dollar in your pocket, the unit of account for your entire life, is sick. It's dying. And its sickness has created a monster. A financial supernova that has inflated every asset on planet Earth to impossible, terrifying highs. We call it the everything bubble. And it's not a sign of prosperity. It's a symptom of a profound systemic disease. It is the direct result of a century of debasement, a long con played on all of us by the very people who promised us stability. This isn't a story about economics. This is a story about power. It's a story about your money, your future, and the hidden architecture of control that dictates the terms of your life. And understanding it is no longer optional. It is a matter of survival. To understand the bubble, you have to understand the debasement. And to understand the debasement, you have to go back. Not to 2008, not even to 1971. You have to go back to 1913, the night the creature was born. In secret, on Jekyll Island, a group of the world's most powerful bankers and politicians gathered to solve a problem. Their problem. The problem was that the financial system was unstable, prone to panics. Their solution was to create a central bank, the Federal Reserve. They sold it to the public as a neutral, scientific arbiter that would guarantee stability, a lender of last resort. It was nothing of the sort. It was a machine designed to do one thing, manage the creation of debt. It was a public-private partnership that gave a cartel of bankers the legal right to print money. And for the first few decades, that machine was kept on a leash, a golden leash. The dollar was defined as a fixed weight of gold. A dollar was gold. You could, in theory, walk into a bank and demand your metal. That was the anchor. That was the limit. Then came the wars. World War I, World War II. Wars are expensive. You can't finance a global conflict by taxing people. They'll revolt. So, you borrow, you print, you inflate. And by 1944, with the world in ashes, America stood alone. It had all the factories. It had all the power. And it had all the gold. So, at a sleepy resort in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, the new gods drew up the new rules. The dollar would be the world's reserve currency. All other currencies would be pegged to it. And the dollar would be as good as gold, pegged at 35 an ounce. This was the system you were born into, the illusion of stability, the golden age. But it was a con, a brilliant con. It allowed the United States to do something no empire had ever done before. It could export its inflation. It could print paper dollars to buy real goods, oil from the Saudis, cars from the Germans, electronics from the Japanese, and the world had to accept them, because those dollars were their reserves. They were as good as gold. It was the greatest deal in human history. And like all deals that are too good to be true, it was built on a lie. The lie was that the US wouldn't abuse the privilege. The lie was that the politicians wouldn't find the temptation of the printing press too great to resist. As we've talked about before on this channel, it's the oldest pattern in history. Rome did it. The denarius, once 95% pure silver, became a bronze-plated token. Why? To pay for bread, circuses, and overextended legions on the frontier. The pattern is always the same. Empire, overreach, debt, debasement. By the 1960s, America was doing it all. A massive welfare state at home, the Great Society, and a massive, bleeding, unwinnable war in Vietnam, blood and treasure flooding out, and the cost was being paid for with paper. Printed dollars. The French, led by Charles de Gaulle, were not fools. They saw the con. They saw the US printing far more dollars than it had gold to back them. They called America's bluff. They started sending ships to New York loaded with US dollars and politely said, "We'll take our gold now, thank you." The gold was hemorrhaging from Fort Knox, the machine was breaking, the con was collapsing. So, on August the 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon went on television and delivered one of the most consequential speeches in modern history. He looked you, your parents, your grandparents right in the eye, and he lied. He said he was temporarily closing the gold window. Temporary. It's the favorite word of the desperate politician. It's the political equivalent of, "It's not you, it's me." In that single moment, the entire global financial system was severed from reality. The anchor was cut. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. It was backed by what, exactly? The full faith and credit of the United States government. A promise. A promise from a politician. It was now pure, unadulterated fiat, money by decree. And in that moment, the great debasement wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. From that day forward, there was no limit on the amount of money that could be created. No anchor, no discipline, just the judgment of a handful of academics and political appointees at the Federal Reserve. And what do you think they chose? This was the great default, but they couldn't let it fail. The system had to be saved, so they cobbled together a new one, the petrodollar system. A deal struck in the dark with Saudi Arabia. The deal was simple. The Saudis would only sell their oil in US dollars. In exchange, they would get US military protection. And just like that, the dollar was no longer backed by gold. It was backed by oil and by aircraft carriers, money and power. Do you see the pattern yet? Once the anchor was cut, the nature of money changed, and the nature of our world changed. Without a gold backing, the dollar was designed to lose value. They don't even hide it. The Fed's stated goal is price stability, which they define as 2% inflation per year. Think of Alba. Their explicit stated goal is to make your money worth 2% less next year than it is today. That's not a bug, that's the feature. Why? Because the entire system now ran on debt. And inflation is the only way to manage an unpayable mountain of debt. It's a soft default. A way to pay back your lenders with money that is worth less than the money you borrowed. It's a hidden tax, a transfer of wealth from the saver to the debtor, and the biggest debtor of all, the government. This new system needed a new manager, and in 1987 he arrived, Alan Greenspan, the new high priest of the Fed, and he brought with him a new doctrine. It became known as the Greenspan put. The put is an options contract, it's insurance. And Greenspan's message to Wall Street was simple. Go ahead, take risks, speculate. If you win, you keep the profits. If you lose, we will print the money to bail you out. He proved it in 1987 after the Black Monday crash. He immediately flooded the system with money. He proved it again in 1998 with the collapse of the hedge fund LTCM. He proved it again after the dot-com bubble burst in 2000. He cut rates to the floor. He trained an entire generation of investors. He taught them that risk was an illusion. The Fed always had your back. This wasn't capitalism. This was moral hazard on a civilizational scale. And with each crisis, the dose of the drug had to get bigger. The drug was cheap debt. The dealer was the central bank. And the entire economy became an addict. The system was now a debt-fueled monster that required constant inflation, constant printing, and constant bailouts just to survive. The low rates of the early 2000s, meant to save the system from the dot-com bust, flowed directly into the next bubble. The housing market, because the money has to go somewhere. And when you make borrowing almost free, people borrow. They speculate. They build castles on foundations of sand. And in 2008, the tide went out. The 2008 global financial crisis wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable climax of a system built on 40 years of lies and cheap debt. The subprime mortgages, the toxic derivatives, the leveraged banks, it was all just a symptom of the same disease. The system went into cardiac arrest. It died. It should have been allowed to die. There should have been a reckoning, a reset. All that bad debt should have been wiped out. Yes, it would have been a brutal depression, but it would have been honest. It would have cleared the rot. But the elites, the bankers, the politicians, the ones who caused the crisis, couldn't allow that. It would have wiped them out. So they didn't fix the problem. They doubled down. They unleashed the beast. They took all that private, toxic, cancerous debt from the banks and they moved it onto the public balance sheet. And they began an experiment so radical, so vast, it boggles the mind. They called it quantitative easing, QE. It's a deliberately boring, academic-sounding term. It's meant to put you to sleep, but what it means is simple. They printed money, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, out of thin air, on a computer screen. And they used that new money to buy bonds from the government and toxic mortgage-backed securities from the banks. They didn't just lower interest rates, they pinned them to the floor. Zero. For a decade, zero interest rate policy. This is the moment the everything bubble was born. This is the key. You have to understand this. When the risk-free rate of return, the interest you get on a safe government bond is zero or even negative after you account for inflation, what do you do with your money? If you leave it in a savings account, it is a guaranteed loss. The 2% inflation eats it alive. Your cash is a melting ice cube. You are being punished for saving. So what do? You have to buy something, anything. You are forced out onto the risk curve. You must speculate. You must become an investor. So where does all that printed money go? It doesn't go to you. It doesn't build bridges or factories. No. It goes straight into the financial system. And it starts chasing yield. It starts chasing scarcity. It floods into the stock market because there is no alternative. It floods into real estate because borrowing is free and property is scarce. It floods into art, into collectible watches, into classic cars, into cryptocurrencies, into everything. It's not a bubble of euphoria. It's not 1999 when people believed in a new paradigm. It's a bubble of desperation. It is a frantic global scramble to get out of a dying currency and into any asset, any life raft that might hold its value. This is why your S&P 500 index fund is at all-time highs. This is why the house down the street, a fixer-upper with a leaky roof, is selling for $1 million in a bidding war. It's not because the economy is so strong. It's not because corporate profits are so spectacular. It's because the denominator is being destroyed. The money is being debased. The everything bubble is just a mirror, reflecting back the decay of the dollar. And here is the cruelest part of the trick, the illusion. You look at your 401k statement, you look at your Zillow estimate, and the numbers are huge. You feel rich, but you can't touch it, you can't use it, because if you sell your house, where will you live? The next house has also been inflated. If you sell your stocks, what will you do with the cash? You are trapped. You are a paper millionaire, but you're still living paycheck to paycheck. This system is a massive, hidden wealth transfer. It benefits the owners at the expense of the earners. It benefits the old at the expense of the young. It benefits the wealthy who own the assets and crushes the working and middle class who sell their time for a currency that is actively being destroyed. The system steals your time. It steals your future. That wage you earned, by the time you save it, by the time you go to spend it, it is worth less. You are on a treadmill. The debasement is the speed of the treadmill, and the Fed just keeps turning the dial up. This is the great divide. It's why society feels like it's tearing apart. It's not left versus right. It's asset owners versus wage earners, and the everything bubble is the barrier between them. It's a wall that gets higher every single day, locking out the young and the poor from any hope of building real wealth. They are told to just work hard, save your money. But that is a lie. Saving money in this system is a fool's game. The game is rigged. So where does this end? We've seen this pattern before. Rome, Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Argentina. The story always ends the same way. The debt becomes too large to be repaid. The printing becomes exponential. And then, one day, faith is lost. It breaks. Slowly, and then all at once. The central banks, the gods of this machine, are now trapped. They have a choice. Two choices. Both are catastrophic. Choice one, they stop printing. They raise interest rates to realistic levels to fight inflation. What happens? The everything bubble implodes. The stock market crashes 50%. The housing market collapses. The entire global financial system, which is built on a mountain of 300 trillion in debt, vaporizes. A deflationary depression so severe it would make the 1930s look like a picnic. Political chaos. Revolution. Choice 2. They continue printing. They sacrifice the currency to save the bubble. They print and print and print to keep the asset prices high, to keep the government solvent. They choose inflation and eventually hyperinflation. They debase the currency until it is worthless. They wipe out the savers. They destroy the middle class. Political chaos. Revolution. What do you think they will choose? What does the politician always choose? They will always choose to print. A deflationary crash is sudden, painful, and obvious. It gets them voted out of office, or worse. Inflation. Inflation is slow, insidious, and deniable. They can blame corporations. They can blame Putin. They can blame supply chains. They can print and kick the can down the road. Just one more year, one more election cycle. They will always choose to print. This is the endgame. The everything bubble is the final, feverish, delirious stage of a dying currency. It's not a celebration of wealth, it's a funeral pyre. This isn't just an intellectual exercise. This isn't a history lesson. This is a warning. The system you were told to trust is a house of cards. The safety you were sold, your savings account, your government bonds, is the riskiest asset of all. The illusion of wealth is being mistaken for the real thing. Your job is not to get rich inside this system. Your job is to survive its collapse. To understand the difference between money and wealth, between the illusion and the reality. Because in the years to come, that distinction will be the only one that matters. The bubble has to pop. The debasement has to end. The only question is, will you be standing in the wreckage holding a pile of worthless paper? Or will you have seen the con for what it was and prepared for what comes next?